Okay, hi. So tonight my homework was to read four variants of the Puss in Boots story, which I think we're all acquainted with thanks to Antonio Banderas and Shrek. So don't think anyone's ever not really, or actually kind of thing that I'd never really heard the entire Puss in Boots story growing up. It wasn't one my parents told me. So I don't know how familiar anybody was with this because I wasn't perfectly familiar when I opened it. Shrek was about as close as I'd ever gotten. Whatever. So the four versions I had to read, we were reading out of the Great Fairy Tale Tradition, another Norton Critical. And the first story is called Constantino Fortunato. It's by Giovanni Francesco Straparola, and apparently Straparola is actually a very prominent fairy tale author, which I did not know. The second one was Cagliuso by Basile, who's my least favorite fairy tale author because he's ridiculous. So in some ways he's my favorite, but in other ways I hate him. The next one that I had to read was The Master Cat, or Puss in Boots by Charles Perrault, whom I want to... And then the last one was Puss in Boots by the Grimm's Brothers, so everyone knows that one. And I'm not going to read any of these out loud because, frankly, they're all pretty much exactly the same with minor details changed. So I'm going to summarize. So basically, Puss in Boots opens with somebody dying. It's usually a dad, though in one case it was a mom. And he traditionally has three, like the dead dad, had three possessions. And in most of them, it's a mill, a donkey, and a cat. So the oldest son gets the mill, the middle son gets the donkey, and the youngest son gets stuck with a cat. And in most versions, after he gets the cat, he says, "Oh God, the only thing this cat is useful for is if I turned it into a pair of muffs or gloves or something." And at this point, the cat starts talking. And they all, and to their credit, all but one of the versions of Puss in Boots, the youngest son does freak out a little and is like, "Oh my God, you're talking," which was nice and realistic. But in one of them, he was just like, "I guess you can talk, whatevs," and didn't seem at all concerned, which is weird because if animals start talking and if it's not a parrot, I'm going to be very put out. But anyway, after the youngest son inadvertently threatens to kill the cat is revealed to be either a fairy in disguise or it's just a talking cat. And the cat says, "Don't kill me because I can get you some gold." So what the cat does is it goes out and it catches partridges or hares or whatever, and it takes them to the local king guy and is like, "My lord and master sends these to you, your humble servant." And the king is like, "I've never heard of your lord and master." And they're like, and the cat's like starts talking up the youngest son, even though the youngest son has nothing to his name. But usually the king, as like a return gift, gives some gold to the cat, and so the cat takes it back to its master, and everything's fine. Eventually, the cat knows the king is going to be passing by a lake and tells the and tells the youngest son guy, "Go pretend to drown." And the youngest son's like, "Okay," and does it. It's really weird. And then the king goes by and the cat's like, "Help, my lord's drowning." And the king helps the guy out of the water. And then the cat says, "Oh, he was attacked by bandits. All of his stuff got stolen. You should give him some nice clothes." And so the king does, because the cat's been around before, so he kind of trusts the cat. He trusts the talking cat. He trusts the talking cat. I don't know. But so the king brings the young son back to his castle, and then the princess sees him and is all like, "Oh my God, you're so rich and you're so handsome," and blah, blah, blah. And they end up getting married, which is kind of problematic because it's shouldn't you court her for a while or something? This king didn't do very much research before marrying off his beloved daughter. Whatevs. So what ends up happening is the youngest son, the cat says, "Just get in a carriage and start driving in this direction." And the cat runs out ahead in front of the youngest son and tells peasants along the way, "There's a big army coming, so you better claim that Lord so-and-so is your master." And it's the youngest son's name. And so whenever they pass anybody, they're like, "Our master is the Lord so-and-so." And the king's all impressed. "Wow, you own so much land." But then and the cat runs on ahead until it finds a castle. And in some versions, the castle is inhabited by an evil sorcerer or an ogre who can change their shape. And the cat tricks it into turning into a mouse and then eats it, so that the castle is empty when they arrive and the youngest son can claim it as his own. And in one version, they get there and the owner of the castle accidentally died on the road on the way home, and you're like, that's handy, I guess. But in all versions, basically, the son and his new bride live happily ever after. What's funny about this story, however, is that in 2 versions of the story, the cat is female. These versions are by Straparola and Basile. And in the Perrault and in the Grimm versions, the cats are both male. Well, the story is traditionally called Puss in Boots, or the Perrault and Grimm versions are both called Puss in Boots. And both of the cats in those versions do indeed get boots. And the excuse at the beginning is like, I need to be able to talk to people and be authoritative, so give me boots that mark me as a figure of authority. It's interesting to note that the 2 male cats out of the 4 cats, 2 female, 2 male, only the male cats get the shoes, which are a symbol of authority. You want to read into that at all, feminists? Just seems a little odd. What's even odder, and what feels like even less of what makes that feel like less of a coincidence, is the fact that in the 2 versions with the female cats, the female cat, after the guy it serves, the youngest son, like gets the girl and like gets the castle, the cat is never mentioned again. It's like it dropped off the face of the planet after doing some massive good deed. It's like, what's that about? But in the versions where the cat is a male and has boots, screen shaking. The Perrault version, the cat becomes a great lord and never chases mice again except for when it wants to, for its own amusement. And in the Grimm version, the male cat becomes the prime minister to the lord, the youngest son, who, when the king dies, since he's married to the king's only daughter, becomes king. So it's interesting to think that the 2 female cats don't get symbols of authority, nor do they get rewarded for all their efforts. And the male cats get symbol of authorities and, like, positions as lords and prime ministers after they do all this good stuff. So that's kind of like, why? Is that a coincidence? Please tell me that's a coincidence, because otherwise that seems really sexist. But what makes the weirdest part about it is in the Basile version, and this is why Basile kind of pisses me off. At the end of the story, the cat says, are you going to look after my body when I die, because I'm not going to live as long as you? And the main character in this story says, oh yes, I'll embalm you and I'll put you in a beautiful golden cage and I'll keep you with me and I'll honor you for the rest of my days. Not that that's creepy or anything, whatever. So, but then the cat's suspicious that maybe the son that had helped out is all just kind of, fucking with him or lying. So the cat pretends to die, and when the son stumbles upon the cat's dead body, he starts saying things like, oh, I'm glad to be rid of this annoying cat, and I'm just gonna toss its body out the window. And the cat wakes up and gives him this huge string of curses, which I will read. After he tosses the body out the window, the cat starts screaming, so this is the reward I get for the lice I cleaned from your back. These are the 1,000 thanks for ridding you of the rags from your back that were only fit to hang spindles on. This is what I get in exchange for having worked like a busy spider to clothe you so elegantly and to feed you when you were famished. You miserable creature! You're nothing but a tattered, ragged, threadbare, deceitful wretch. Such is the reward of those who wash the head of an ass. Get out of my sight, and may a curse be on everything I've done for you, because you are not even worth spitting on. What a fine golden cage you've prepared for me. What a sweet grave you've assigned me. I go and serve you, work and sweat, only to receive this reward. Oh, woe is he who boils his pot for the hope of others. That philosopher put it well when he said, whoever goes to bed an ass, wakes up an ass. I don't know. In short, whoever works the most should expect the least, but good words and bad deeds deceive the wise and the foolish. And then she jumps out a window and leaves. Which, that's why Basile, pisses me off. But I kind of appreciate him, by the way. He has those huge, chunks of just, someone screaming at other people. So it's like a soap opera and fairy tale. But, what's interesting is that even though the son is ousted as, basically a giant douche, he doesn't get punished for it. The cat just runs off and leaves him with the castle and the girlfriend. And you're like, since he was ungrateful, shouldn't there be a moral consequence? but there isn't, which is weird. The weird one, the one that I find the most problematic, however, is the Perrault version, because in true Perrault fashion, Perrault attaches not one, but 2 morals to his version of Puss in Boots. 2 morals to Puss in Boots. And the morals, well, the first moral is, he writes it in verse again, so this is going to be super embarrassing. He writes, although the advantage may be great when one inherits a grand estate, passed on from father to son, young men often find their industry combined with ingenuity leads to greater prosperity. So Perrault's moral is you need to have ingenuity and industry in order to be prosperous. Where in this story is the main character at all in possession of ingenuity? He sits there, he inherits a cat from his father, who I might add was too dumb to realize the cat was like a fairy in disguise and use it to get gold for himself, presumably. But the son just sits back and lets the cat do all the work, blindly follows the things the cat says, never lifts a finger on his own, and gets completely rewarded for doing nothing. And Perrault's moral is to be, possess ingenuity? I mean, this directly contradicts the events of the story. And then the second moral is, though the miller's son did quickly gain the heart of a princess whose eyes he tamed, as he charmed her in a natural way, it's due to good manners, looks, and dress that inspired her deepest tenderness and always helps to win the day. What the fuck? Seriously, it's saying if you look good and have good manners, people are going to like you more than if you're wealthy. But he would never have met the princess had the cat not led him to her by the hand after dressing him up and, talking him up to be some great lord. So again, this moral is completely undercut by the actual story itself. There was no, oh my god, look at my manners. If he'd been like a peasant, and everyone thought he was a peasant when he got with the princess, that'd be one thing. But they were under the impression that he was a great lord. So this moral is also moot. What? I don't understand anything anymore. And it's really dumb. But this video has gotten very long, so I'm going to cut it off now and leave you with the fact that Puss in Boots is basically really dumb. Just all over the place.